everyone. Welcome to this insightful discussion. We have with us Mr. Santosh Nagarajachari. He is the founder and chief coach at Golden Age Shooting Academy, which is in Bangalore. I'm extremely happy and grateful that you are here despite your busy schedule. And also with Santosh, I think I would like to add that he's a very relational coach. He's worked with state, national, as well as international shooters. And I work with him through Nut Sports. So it makes it even special to have a coach who I have worked with, to discuss about certain aspects which are so important when it comes to understanding sports psychology. When I began my career as a sports psychologist, the focus was always on athletes. But I think the more I learned working with the coaches, there was so much learning. I realized that it's so important for sports psychologists to learn about the coach's philosophy and how they actually train, what is their vision, what is their objective, because that really gives us an insight to work with the athletes. So before we move forward, my first question to you is, I know you come with a CA background, you're a chartered accountant by profession, and then you've got into the field of coaching. So tell us about your journey as a coach.
My journey as a coach has always started with being a teacher. So I still remember in my younger days, I used to pick up all the boys from the my residential area and teach them how to play cricket.
Okay.
Try to compete against the bigger guys.
Mm-hmm.
And while doing so, I used to take them every week. The weekdays we used to train, and weekends we used to have matches.
Okay.
So that systematic way of working was always there in the head, and the teaching part was always ingrained inside.
Okay.
So apart from that, then I started moving on to teaching subjects as I progressed into my career of professional career. And then I started office, so I started teaching work. So teaching was always part of me, so that never left. So that translated into teaching of shooting when it happened. And the big difference between teaching and coaching, as I see, is coaching is a step ahead of teaching. Right? You actually try to push the athlete to their potential. As a teacher, you are giving a skill that is non-existent. As a coach, you're trying to push the athlete to his potential.
Okay.
So the transition between teaching and coaching was a little easy for me.
Yeah, maybe
So-
because of all the teaching background that
Yes,
you
that
come
I
with.
did undergo myself. So my philosophy was always been grow. So you
Okay.
continue to grow because you look at any competition, be it cricket has reached its pinnacle today.
Yeah,
The kind
absolutely.
of game that happens, basketball, amazing. You get the game, the strategies and the game that they play today is phenomenal. Football has reached, even kabaddi. In fact, I was just
Absolutely.
watching the
Yeah.
the league games and the players picking, and somebody went for more than 2 crores.
Yeah,
So that means the amount of load that brings on the athlete is also high
absolutely.
when they're getting such kinds of opportunities. So because the competition and the event is always growing, as a coach and as a person involved in the sport, we also need to grow constantly. So which involves learning,
Yeah.
adaptation, and delivering results. So another important aspect of this philosophy of grow is repeating the hard work.
Yeah,
Continuously keep repeating the hard work, because we believe repetition is mother of all skills.
absolutely.
And opportunity, whenever you get an opportunity, you seize it and you always play to win.
Right.
So that's the best philosophy, I think, and it has delivered good results for me as of now and for the students. And more importantly, I think it's a structured way of thinking, which does help us a lot.
Absolutely. And I really like the philosophy that, you come with. You're saying that grow is one of the philosophy. You want to grow as a person. You also want your athletes to grow and move forward.
Correct.
I just want to bring in this other question. Like sometimes I know that, your own players may be going to other coaches also, maybe
Correct.
certain times, right? If they are excelling at a very high level, maybe
Correct.
there are different coaches who can take care of them. How does this growth really help them?
See, the whole point being, the ultimate objective has to be the athlete has to perform at the top level.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, there might be certain lacunas in me as a coach. I might not be able to see certain technical challenges that my athlete is facing. So nothing wrong in approaching another coach.
Yeah.
So similarly, whenever we have problems, we do approach psychologists, or whenever we have problems in physical inabilities, we do reach out to our physiotherapists.
Yeah.
So similarly, reaching out to another coach in the same field is definitely worthwhile at times. And there could be there are people who have a better influence at the game. So you never know if you find a person who can influence your game a little more.
Yeah.
So it will definitely be an advantage, and I don't think working with another coach should be looked at as a problem. Rather, it should be looked at as an opportunity.
Yeah, and that is something that I really like, about what you're saying, that it's such a growing and learning opportunity again to learn from, another person and
Correct.
another coach, and probably even from the same field. And you're also thinking about, how the athlete can grow and move forward,
Correct.
and how you can also learn from the same process. Right?
So good example would be, it cuts down a lot of wastage of time at times. I've looked at kids who come from school days, then to move on to college, and college has a very negative impact on their mindset. Too many friends, too many new habits, and too many new things to attend to. So when we tell this to new coaches that this is what you're going to face in the next 2 years with your athletes, if they listen to us, it's good for them. And similarly, we didn't have that kind of hand holding when we started out.
Absolutely.
Because nobody told us this problem you will face when you start out.
Yeah.
And we have to go through that whole process. It doesn't make sense. So having somebody to talk to and sharing experiences, this is at a very low level. When you look at really taking the athlete to the highest potential possible, then you definitely need that kind of sharp minds who can nudge you also along.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
we might somewhere fall short at times. So I always tell that we are not 100% perfect.
Yeah.
So it's just an opportunity that we are getting there, which we can actually explore that potential which we have not thought of yet.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
some perspective from outside always
Absolutely.
helps.
Yes. And another thing, Santosh, is, most of us generally think, especially people from non-sporting backgrounds, may end up thinking that the role of the coach is only coaching. But that is definitely not true, right? Because there are so many other things that you do as coaches.
Correct.
So the reason I'm asking you this question is also because there are so many people who are interested in sports sciences. There are people who are interested in sports psychology. I think this is going to give them little bit of clarity on what are the roles of a coaches.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I've listed down a few points, in terms of the roles and responsibilities which every coach has to go through. So one is the major point, straight away to start out would be ensuring learning.
Yeah.
So that's the major role of a coach. So he has to ensure that learning happens throughout the year. The entire calendar year learning is happening. So that's the primary goal. Second thing is maintaining discipline in training. So that comes from the coach. It doesn't come from anybody else. I strongly feel this point. Yes, of course, athletes have to turn up to the venue to actually train. So without athlete even turning up, we can't do anything. Beyond when they actually turn up, what do you do as a coach, right? So you need to have things planned much earlier in advance, and things ready for the athlete to follow.
Yeah. Does discipline also involve something like, they need to be regular in their training, and what are you going to do to ensure that regularity? Is that also part of
Partly,
discipline?
yes. Both ways. It does work both ways. One is, giving that encouragement so that the athlete comes back. Right?
Right.
I know I've seen and heard about a lot of coaches who they're so strict that, students fear going back.
Right.
After certain bad performances, they take break couple of days, they find excuses. So I say, it's okay to fail. It's absolutely fine to fail. So create an environment that the athlete is very comfortable coming back and discussing what exactly the problems were.
Yeah.
Or at least what they thought were. Because most of the times, when it comes to psychological issues, challenges, especially in terms of delivery in competition, so students might not assess their performance very objectively. So their assessment might be very different. But if you're very, if you're going to counter that in a negative way, then the athlete might not open up. So there is a way of discussing things and, allowing things, for them to be very comfortable in terms of coming back and training. So creating that kind of an environment, positive environment. and creating trust in the athlete. So that's another major role the coach has to play. Because if we are not going to build that trust over a period of time, and the trust is not going to come just because we are open to the athlete.
Correct.
Right? There are certain actions we will take on behalf of the athletes.
Yeah.
Sometimes defending them against their parents, or sometimes issuing letters to the colleges telling that I need this person to be in training here, and backing them up.
Right.
So sometimes when they've failed, to back them up, telling that no, I stand behind you. I'm very sure you can do better. So these are small things that work in favor. And next thing is to listen to athlete. I've seen a lot of people not listening to athletes. So when athletes open up about various points, the coach should not limit himself to only the coaching or technical aspect of it.
Right.
Certain times, just to give a ear to, lending your ear to the problems that athletes are facing, probably at their home or elsewhere, college. There might be a ton of problems they are going through. So just listen to them. You need not give a solution actually. It just happens, sometimes they just let it out, burst it out, and they become better.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you just sometimes have to just listen to them. And one of the major challenges is preventing problems from occurring in advance.
Absolutely.
That's a bigger role of a coach. So that next month this event is lined up, and these are the problems that your athlete is going to face. So suddenly what you can do is you can preempt that, tell the athlete that, see, this is how you need to plan your schedule this entire month ahead. So kindly, if there is any changes, that if you're going to skip a few classes, do let me know. So your performance during this match or competition season is going to become very important for us. So accordingly, planning that and preventing any problems from arising. And on top of it, there's a lot of chaos. Coaching is a lot of chaos, dealing with a lot of chaos.
Absolutely.
So through this chaos, keeping your focus on the goal. That this athlete has to deliver at that level. So through this chaos, you maintain that focus. So that is the real goal of coaching, and the roles and responsibilities of coaching as far as I see.
Yeah. And I also, at least through my experience, I've also seen that, at least in some of the academies where players are staying far away from their parents, coaches are also taking on the roles of being a parent.
Yes.
Right? It becomes like, I have seen sometimes where, one of the coaches I was interviewing, so a parent was like, my child doesn't do homework, please tell him to do homework.
Yes.
So all these things are also, somewhere, even though it's not part of your sporting role,
Correct.
It ends up becoming a part of the coach's role, because somewhere the athletes end up listening to coaches more than the parents.
Correct.
Even that
Correct.
ends up happening sometimes, right?
It is a combination of things. When teenage hits, obviously parents are no more the go-to people for children.
Yeah.
They don't want to go to parents.
Yeah.
And so obviously coach becomes the first person to go to for parents more than children again. So all the ranting of parents come to the coach. So another point being here is the way in India the larger picture of coach is painted. Is categorized into the guru category. Right? The moment you say guru, now the entire character based improvement is responsibility of the coach.
Correct.
So that is why when sir, please tell my son or my daughter, I see her wasting too much time, why don't you advise her? Why don't you tell her not to waste so much time, not to watch so much mobile?
Yeah.
So it does become a challenge in terms, parenting. We also fall into that trap of parenting a little bit.
Yeah. So how do you distinguish that role? Because sometimes, it does happen even to us, where they're like, it won't come just to sports psychology or working with athletes. It does come to, make sure that this discipline is there,
Correct.
Make sure that he doesn't watch his mobile, etc. So how do you detach yourself and, kind of draw that boundary that this is not coming under my role?
It becomes very simple at some point of time. Maybe earlier in the initial days of coaching, we all go through this problem, and we all suffer from overdoing things. And eventually at some point of time you do realize that there are certain aspects to the game that you can control, and there are something you cannot control of the athlete. Right? The moment he reaches home after the training, and after let's say we've given him 10 tasks, he's completed 10 tasks. Now he's going to sitting and watching his mobile. Now I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So at some point we have to learn to let go.
Yeah.
So letting go, that's the key here in terms of accepting a level of performance and sticking to that. So if
Correct.
we are as long as we are sticking to the goal and things are working fine, the other aspects, that means it's not really affecting.
Hmm.
So then there will be certain things that you will be able to foresee,
Hmm.
right? Let's say somebody going to attending one or two parties might not be affecting his game today,
Hmm.
but if that becomes a habit, every Friday, every Saturday morning you're seeing that person turning up late, so
Yeah.
obviously okay, something else is going to come in your way.
Correct. Correct. And you also come up with solutions in terms of how to deal with it.
Yes, one is learn to deal at our own level,
Yeah.
and then at the athlete level.
Mm-hmm.
So first thing is to accept that at certain point of time or at certain age, an athlete is bound to be influenced too much from the outside world,
True.
right?
True.
So at that point of time, you need to control in terms of first advice,
Hmm.
and then be patient.
Mm. Wow. I think, you're talking about so many life skills that the coaches need to have, right? Because one is coaching is such a challenging field.
Correct.
And I think with all the things that you've spoken about, coaches are, it's not like coaches are not susceptible to mental health issues,
Yeah.
right? So there are so many things that coaches also go through. They have their personal life. Like in your case, I know that you run your academy at the same time. You also are into coaching, so it builds up much more challenges. And at the
Correct.
same time, parents have a certain expectation that the children have to perform at a certain level.
Correct.
So basically, I think one thing through this discussion I also want to bring to your notice is that if you feel as coaches that you do need help, reach out to the right kind of people and speak about whatever is bothering you and seek help. Because like the way you said, it is also about knowing when to seek help.
Correct.
And making it as an opportunity to learn from somebody else. I think seeking help is something which is extremely important even for the coaches to do.
True, absolutely. So the real challenge is, there are two ways of two sides to this. One is lack of commitment on the coach's side.
Mm-hmm.
When they become a little desensitized in terms of what is happening, so they struggle with their own problems,
Yeah.
and they don't know when exactly to seek help.
Yeah.
So they become a little desensitized in terms of performances of their athletes, and then it becomes a little more problematic in terms when you look at the athlete not turning up on
Yeah.
time and not being disciplined. Now these are two different sides. One, here the coach himself is not performing top notch,
Yeah.
or here the athlete is not performing top notch. Sometimes it's a combination, sometimes it's independent situation. So in this, you will see a lot of coaches struggling during this phase.
Yeah.
And it's a cycle throughout the year. The emotions are not the same.
Absolutely.
Sometimes we are all charged up as coaches, okay, this is what we need to do, and suddenly after 6 months, then you would see a dip in, because all the students are off, or many things happening, competition performances. If the performances are good in competition, the coach is also really motivated.
Yeah.
The performance is down, then again the coach's motivation is a little
Absolutely. I
low.
think you're bringing up such an important point, like, how self motivation is important, and working on your mental health as a coach is an everyday thing.
Correct.
It's not something which happens like in seasons.
No.
So,
So
yeah.
what happens is emotions varying throughout the season is common, but
Yeah.
we taking care of ourselves and our own mental health is something very important,
Very, very important.
which we need to
yeah.
be consciously working on a regular basis.
True.
It's not something that I will say, okay, when I'm down, I'll look at something. When I'm very happy, I'm okay with it. No, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely,
Very-
right? Because things can build up over a period of time and then burst into something really major as
Correct,
well.
correct.
Yeah.
And you don't want that to happen whenever the peak competition is. So the coach is the person who is holding a lot of things together when things are
Yeah.
not working for an athlete, right? He's totally dependent on you in terms of to bring sanity into the game.
Mm-hmm.
So the athlete knows he can perform really well. Let's say an athlete who's top notch, and the entire team is dependent on him, or let's say if it's an individual sport like shooting, he knows that his potential is to win that competition, national championship or a Asian Games or something. Now problem is he is undergoing a different level of emotional turbulence,
Yeah.
where sometimes the performance is hit and miss, sometimes it's very good. So at that point of time, it is the coach who brings sanity into the game.
True.
Right, he is the person who tries to keep the emotion at a level. But if the coach himself is not really, well behaved at that point of time, or is not a person who is able to control his emotions through that tough phase, so it will affect the athlete a lot. So eventually,
Absolutely.
it's a lose situation for everyone involved
True.
in it.
True. And one of the things, I think that you as a coach might have noticed, and even I as a sports psychologist, this is something that is commonly, I mean, these are the common issues which come to us. One is in terms of, players perform exceptionally well in the practice, but
Okay.
however, in the competitions, they don't really perform that well. So, what do you think are the, reasons as to why this happens?
This is a more common phenomenon in an individual sport, whereas a team sport, yes, but it's not so obvious in a team sport that
Okay.
somebody else covers up for your mistake, or somebody else perform better, or there's a luck factor. But in
Yeah.
individual factor, this is very obvious.
Yeah.
To see the difference between practice and a match situation. In
Yeah.
practice, they're doing really well. In matches, the performances are dropping. So peak performance in practice does not necessarily mean their ability to convert that in a match.
Hmm.
So that means the person has not trained himself to execute the same level of skill in a match situation.
True.
So match situation varies because of expectations, squarely the burden of expectation, right? So what happens is, if the athlete is walking into the arena, into the match, telling that, this is my score, this is what I'm going to do today,
Right.
for their success in Asian Games at that point of time,
Yeah.
and being mentally prepared for that challenge. So a
Yeah.
lot of people fail to mentally prepare themselves for the challenges of the competition. So that is where the performances in practice will not translate into matches.
Hmm.
So the whole idea about how I'm going to be throughout emotionally stable,
Yeah.
the match. So that is what is going to tell them how to define their success in the match. So another thing is the burning desire to win.
Hmm.
Right? If you see a match, any competition, if you take, they start off at, let's say, fifth position, they may go to second position, they may be leading it sometimes, and then suddenly they'll go to fourth position, then third position. See, this is an emotional roller coaster right now. Now, throughout this, the burning desire to win has to be there, because the match situation can keep changing at any given point of time.
Absolutely.
Till the last shot is fired, or till the last ball is done, you don't know what is going to happen. Right? The result is not yet out, so that means you're going to fight for it till the last minute.
True.
So that burning desire to win throughout that game is also going to define their ability to translate their practice or their skill into matches. So last and important point is fear. Fear of competition. So this is something that a lot of people hide from themselves.
True.
Right? They say, "Oh, I am strong. I am okay. I'm ready for this. I know how to do it. I can deliver this." But the fear, something they've hidden from themselves, a truth that they have not spoken about themselves to themselves, is what is going to come back. Again, it's again linked to expectation, burden of expectations. So person is extremely prepared, is done his training well, but that fear is there, which is hiding it, rather than facing the fear, telling that, okay, I'm going to face this fear.
Yeah.
Fear is real. I would rather say threat is real. Threat of losing a match due to these things is real, but fear is a choice.
True.
So we make a choice at that point of time. So athlete can decide very easily in terms how I will handle myself. If there is failure, you again come back and rework with it.
True.
If you succeed, then if it probably becomes a template to replicate it in more matches in the future and succeed.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And another question is, Santosh, see, when it comes to sports psychology, there are certain skills, which we tell the athlete is extremely important, be it with goal setting or be it with imagery or basically the kind of communication, self-talk, etc. So, and these are the skills which are also important in coaching,
Correct.
right? The psychology of coaching.
Correct.
So basically, do you use these in your practice?
Yes, 100%. So every time we get an opportunity to implement whatever we've learned in terms of from the psychologist or from fellow coaches or wherever we've learned it from, we do love to implement every aspect of these techniques into our the coaching. So the mental aspects, when you look at it, what are really growing is presently is to learn to cope up with the stresses of the competition.
True. Yes.
So that is the biggest challenge right now, and because any sport you pick, the number of entrants into the sport is growing.
Absolutely.
So
Right.
you look at badminton, there are so many. You look at shooting, there are more than 10,000 shooters in nationals.
Yeah.
And then basketball, you look at it, you just walk into one ground, you will see so many kids practicing simultaneously. So that means the competition is ever growing.
Yeah.
So how to cope up with the stresses of new entrants and competition becoming tougher and tougher. So I think it's a process of elimination where good coaches elevate themselves
Yeah.
with these techniques, and the average coaches would remain.
True.
So,
Absolutely. And my other question is, as a coach, I mean, psychologists and coaches really have to work together. What are the qualities that they really need to work together?
so first is common goals.
Hmm.
So the psychologist as well as coaches need to have common goals. Common goals in terms of bring the best out of the team or the individual whom they are working on.
Yeah.
So that common goal keeps everything going really well. So beyond that common goals, what would really help is acknowledge that the other person can deliver better in certain areas. Right. So as a coach, I cannot deliver 100% on psychological front because I have certain limitations. Now, if a student comes and tells me that I have this problem, I'm not able to deal with it mentally. So as a coach, if I accept that problem, right, it becomes a challenge in terms to hand over that responsibility to that person. Let's say a very good bowler, a coach knows his ability to bowl really well at the end of the match, close to the in death overs, he bowls really well. Let's take an example. Now suddenly what happens is, if the person is telling I'm unable to deal after 2 losses, the person comes and tells I'm unable to deliver at this death over. So coach might not give him that opportunity at all.
Yeah.
So there cuts his
True.
potential.
Absolutely.
Thereby
Yeah.
cutting his potential. So coach cannot accept the limitations of athletes. Whereas when directed this towards a psychologist can definitely sit and deal with those demons in the head and tell couple of bad matches does not mean your ability is lost.
Yeah.
So psychologists can deal with that and they can bring them back in a better mental shape, and coach can again give that responsibility and say, come on, now let's do this.
Yeah, I think you've brought in such an important point in terms of how, playing by the strengths
Correct.
is so important.
True.
Yeah.
And they have to complement each other. The psychologist as well as a coach. Without complementing each other, it's not going to work.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
be clear on the larger picture.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you work on something, I work on something, but it's not contributing to the larger picture. It doesn't make any sense.
And I think that communication is the key, right? For us to work together and discuss and see how we can actually help the athlete, perform.
True.
And also achieve the particular goal.
True. Very true.
And how do you implement, let's say, the suggestions based on assessments or, certain sessions that the psychologist ends up giving you? Like, how do you implement that in your coaching practice?
For me, it becomes a little more, helpful in terms when I get certain advices in terms of how to handle situations. It becomes really easy because, we would be discussing so much about the game, right? With the athlete, our main job is to focus and discuss everything about the game, but that we have totally cut off from the other aspects the athlete is going through.
Yeah.
So now when the psychologist spends sufficient time with the athlete and brings those value additions into the game, so suddenly it does occur to us in terms of, okay, so at a particular situation in a match, maybe these techniques can be applied, and suddenly you can see a different outcome.
Okay.
So that way, you should look at it in terms of how I can assemble that into my own strategies.
True.
So if that can happen, it will be really amazing, and that's bringing the best out of the athlete by two separate individuals working on a common individual and getting the best out of them.
Yeah. I think this is perfect. It really sums up, how we really have to work together. We really have to work for the common benefit and goal of the athlete's performance. And also, like, in the process, everybody has to take care of their own mental health.
Correct. And it's also becomes a big responsibility of coach to defend a psychologist in terms when it comes to parents and other places, other element, because the psychologist is always judged very fast.
That's
the result, they want the result to come very fast, and that is not going to happen unless the athlete has turned a lot of pages. Right here, majority
I think you brought in such an important point, because if the performance doesn't happen, it is the psychologist.
First is the psychologist. Psychologist is the person who gets it first, because coach anyway has to physically still deliver. He has to be still in the ground, standing like this. What is happening? But same thing is not true with psychologist. Even psychologist is sitting there watching the match and trying to assess. There's nothing much you can see. So the first hit is always at the psychologist.
Absolutely.
So it also becomes the responsibility of coach in terms of to choose his psychologist well, and also to draw lines, and also to protect. At the same time, be honest with the parents or the people management in the team, telling that, okay, see, the psychologist is doing the job, but the athlete is not being very honest about it. So that becomes a biggest challenge, I think, for if it is a game, then coaches can easily decide what the athlete is performing, whether he's giving his 100% or not. But psychologically, it's very difficult. Sometimes coaches get a sense of this. So at that point of time, putting it across to the psychologist and to the athlete, telling that, see, you're not being very upfront and honest about it. It is for your own good that you need to do this. So it will work that way. So that way, I think coach has a little larger role in terms of protecting his team.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate what you said, which is very important and essential. So with this, we've come to the end of the discussion. Thank you so much, Santosh, for all the inputs. It was, I think some of the things which have come forward are like, how it is important for the coach to grow. And it is important for the coach to also take care of his mental health.
Correct.
And at the same time, learning from other coaches is important. Also learning and working with the psychologist on the common mission and vision, and working towards the larger picture, and also supporting the psychologist, and at the same time vice versa is something, it's something that is phenomenal from this discussion that we've had. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.